Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. It's me, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu. Thanks for checking back in. It's been a while. It's always been a while between these podcasts. The ambition is to always put them out nice and quick, and I promise you I have every intention of doing it, but bonsai gets busier and busier. I've talked about the 1 to 2, one branch turns into 2, and every year your workload doubles on your trees. And it always seems to take priority, of course, over things like podcasts, because there's times when you need to do work and there's times when you don't need to do work. But because there's so many different trees and species in the collection, they all need things done at different times. So anyway, we're back for another episode. We're coming now to very late in spring, heading in towards summer. So I just want to have a bit of a yak about what's been happening around the yard, talk about things that have been on my mind in regard to my bonsai and development of my bonsai, and to talk about goal setting and planning and that sort of thing, which is super important with our trees. So I want to focus on that today in the podcast. I want to talk about beauty in bonsai and what it is that we strive for from my perspective, and I think a lot of people strive for it as well. So we'll cover off on those, and it should be interesting for you for the next 40, 50 minutes. So stick around and get comfortable, put the AirPods in, make sure you get the couple on the go, and we'll have a yak. So with spring brings lots of new opportunities, lots of hope, lots of spurring on of both yourself and your bonsai as things wake up and come back to life. And here in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, which is where I am, spring's always a great time. You come out of a cold and wet and dreary winter, and then spring pops up and you get this beautiful growth and everything looks great and it looks fantastic. And it's a relief to some extent that you know that everything's sort of coming back to life and starting to move as it should be going on. You have your constant battles with pests coming to that fresh, succulent new growth that they seem to love year on year. But it's also time that you need to be really in tune with exactly what it is that you're looking to achieve. So as you look at your spring growth, everybody thinks the same thing, where it's, all right, now how do I manage this? What do I prune? What do I cut off? What do I keep? What am I doing? And it's very easy to fall into an approach where you just automatically go into pruning mode. You have your scissors at the ready, soft succulent growth, and you fly through tree after tree after tree. And they all look pretty at the end of it, nice new growth, full silhouettes, structure you can't see. So it's, you're proud of yourself and proud of your trees, and it's a nice moment. That's great. But I think what gets missed on occasion, and is probably the most important thing, is to reiterate to yourself before you go out to your trees what your goal is with each of those trees, and before you tear the scissors out and sharpen them and start flying through new foliage. It's okay. Well, what am I trying to do with this tree? Each individual tree is different. Now, no two trees in your collection will ever have the same goal. Some may have the consistency of thickening lower branches or something like that, or sacrifice branch to thicken the trunk. But how they grow, where the sacrifice branch is, length of time the sacrifice branch has been there, how many resources it's starting to draw, all that sort of stuff is unique. It's individual for each of the trees. So you want to make sure that when you're doing your maintenance work, that you're very strict on understanding exactly where it's at. And I give the advice to people that when you pick a sacrifice branch in the past, like when you first pick that sacrifice branch, put something on it, a little plastic tie, a little ring of loose aluminium wire, something. So when you go back to that tree 6 months down the track or after spring and there's branches everywhere, it's some kind of a reminder to you that something is happening on that branch or in that area of the tree that you need to stop and recollect your thoughts on. When you've got 1 or 2 trees in your collection, that sort of stuff, it always comes to mind what you're trying to achieve, because you're looking at that tree day in, day out. But when your collection starts to grow to 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, whatever it is, then those decisions you made or those goals that you set in the past suddenly become a little bit blurry, because, it's like, what was I doing with this one again? Where was I at? Oh, that's right, it's something. And everyone starts by taking notes and photographs and that sort of thing. And if you've got that sort of a system, excellent. Go back to it, see what your objectives were in the past or what you'd focused on. Go back to your notes and recall that information before you start cutting. There's nothing worse than having the spring burst of energy, the spring flush of growth, pruning it off and wasting it, because it only comes around once a year. That first initial spring burst of growth doesn't happen twice. So you get one chance to harness it and use it for whatever your objectives are. And that's where, for myself, I made a few mistakes on trees as I was pruning them. I'd be lopping through, the 40th trident maple for the day, and you go, oh, that's right, that one I wanted to thicken that branch, I wanted to do it. It's not the end of the world. Like, I don't think that by pruning it off you get the tree and put it in the recycle bin. It's that you go, well, I've just been set back because, yeah, sure, I'll get more growth out of spring, like something will happen later on in spring and early summer, and there's techniques we can go over, like defoliation, which I'll talk about later, that sort of can force the tree to start growing again. But that initial burst of growth, that comes about once a year. So, when you do the wrong thing and you miss harnessing it, then it's a long wait between drinks to sort of move on to the next step of the development of that particular part of the tree where you'd pruned it. So I think having a tagging system is a really good thing. But not having goals also came to mind too for me, that when you just prune because that's what pruning is, everyone loves shaping their trees. Everyone loves their trees looking pretty. Everyone loves it, me included. But not having a goal, it'll just result in you never achieving your ultimate dream for that particular bonsai. So at some point or another, now 2 years down the track, 10 years down the track, whatever it is, you've got to sit back, put your feet up, look at that tree long and hard and go, what is my objective with this tree? Where do I want it to get to? How can I make it the best it can possibly be? Each step, each year, it gets better, but how can I make it the best? What would make it the best bonsai to me in the whole world? And that takes planning, and that takes having a goal or an objective that you want to achieve with your trees. And just fluffing about year on year, season on season, and just keeping it alive and saying, hey, this bonsai, I've had it for 20 years. And you look at it and go, well, really, it's not much different from one at the nursery that's been grown for 5 years, that's had no work done on it. Well, that might be satisfying to some people, but it's definitely not satisfying to me. I always look to say to myself, how do I make this the very best bonsai in the world? Not just in my collection and not just to make me happy, but make it the best in the world. Because if you undervalue or undersell where your bonsai is going to get to, then I guarantee you that's going to be your goal, and that's where it's going to sit. It's going to sit as a substandard bonsai. So your target should always be make it the best in the world. How do you get there? What do you do? Where do you start? What's the process? And each season that we come across, every single one of them provides us with an opportunity to do something, to take the tree to the next level. Repotting, talked about repotting, how important the roots are on the tree. Spring, harnessing the spring growth to thicken, to develop, to put taper, to add ramification, whatever it is. Then we get to summer and we've got potential defoliation on the trees. We've got decandling coming up for black pines, all pruning of junipers. That all happens, and then we get autumn, and we go back to the start again after that with our winter. So lots of pruning happens in autumn, lots of shaping, lots of styling, lots of wiring, lots of advancement of the trees. So by just mechanically going through all that sort of stuff, and I think that's one of my biggest criticisms, the thing I hate the most. I don't hate a lot of things, but the thing I hate the most about bonsai is mechanically doing something because a book or you see it somewhere online that says, hey, now is the time to do this. So you do it. Okay, so my tree's weak and it's dying. okay, should you have done it? I didn't think about that. It just mechanically came to mind that, spring's here, prune spring growth. Cool, okay. What's your goal for the tree? I don't have one. I just know it's spring and I have to prune my trees. So, I think that there's a lot that can be done to improve things, and just that stopping, putting your feet up, looking at the tree and going, well, how do I go from here, wherever here is? And here could be a beautiful bonsai. It could be a magnificent tree. But how do I go from here to the best? How do I get to that point? I think that every single one of us, if we had that objective in mind when we worked on our trees, how do I get my tree to be the best? Then we'd all be far more satisfied with our trees. We'd all have beautiful bonsai in our backyard. Not that we don't have now, but I think that bonsai is one of those passions. It's not, I was going to call it a hobby, but it's not. It's really a passion for those of us. And any of you listening to this season, the third season of the Bonsai Stuff podcast, if you've made it this far with my droning voice, then it's more than a hobby. It's something that you love, that it's hard to explain to other people why you have this passion for trees, and especially little trees in pots. But, we want to keep advancing. We want to keep getting further, and having these goals and these targets in mind is doing it. And most failures that you'll get with your bonsai come from not having a plan. So, as I said, overworking, mechanically going into doing a task because the calendar says, yep, this is the time of year, this is what you should do it. Yeah, okay, so overworking your trees. At the other side of the scale is underworking your trees, being too afraid to go, well, I'm not sure what to do, so I'll do nothing. Your trees sit there, they get too thick, they get too long, they become little shrubs, they no longer resemble a bonsai. The strong areas of the tree get stronger, the weak areas of the weak areas of the tree die off because they've become too weak, and you suddenly get so far away from anything that makes you happy with bonsai that ultimately, the tree may die, you lose your enthusiasm, the scissors get put away into a drawer somewhere never to be seen again, and life moves on, and that beautiful passion, that burning desire you had inside you because you hesitated because you did nothing, well, you and the bonsai pay the ultimate price for that hesitation. The other thing is doing things at the wrong time. I really dislike, I don't mean to make this podcast about things I dislike, but I dislike bonsai calendars because they sort of prompt you to do something at a certain time, and that could be the wrong time for your particular area or your demographics, wherever your climate, wherever you're living, at that time, if you're in an apartment that sort of doesn't get much rainfall and it's a very dry environment, maybe very different to someone who lives at the base of a mountain where they get maybe a little bit more rain. It's a bit on the cooler side too. So having calendars should always be used by everybody as a bit of a guide, an indication to say around about this period in time, this is what you should be doing. And that's why with the podcast, I talk about where I am and where I'm based and what I'm doing, because it sort of doesn't apply to other places specifically. It's just sort of a prompt to say, hey, by the way, this is what I'm doing at this time. Around about now, I'd think if you're in the same hemisphere as me and you got the same sort of climate, then I'd think that for the similar sort of trees that you'd be doing roughly the same sort of a thing. So here's what I'm doing, and that's the only way that I ever intend this. I don't intend it to be something of like, this is the time that you must do it, because it just won't work. The other thing is getting a plan, developing it, working out your strategy, pruning, wiring, styling, selecting sacrifice branches, selecting structure, positioning the tree in the pot, all that stuff that goes with it, and then not giving the plan time to come to fruition. So flipping the switch after a short period of time, hey, that angle that I had the tree on, I reckon it's going to look better like this. So you're getting to that point where you're planning, it's not a 6-month business plan you're putting together. This is for the development of a bonsai, which is decades, which is a long period of time, because we want to go from where it is now to the best, as I said. And you've got to give things due time to grow, to develop, to achieve that target. And I find that's a really common mistake where people that possibly don't have enough bonsais or have more time available than bonsais to keep them busy, they overwork the trees and they change the plan at the same time as well. So they're not just pruning too much or repotting too frequently or whatever it is. They're actually saying, that bottom branch that I had as the bottom branch, no longer the bottom branch. I'm cutting off. I'm going to this side. The tree, instead of moving to the left side, it's now going to move to the right side. So the apex gets wide to the left, then it gets wide to the right. And, 6 months later, I think it looked better on the left. Back it goes to the left. So therefore, things get weaker, things crack, things break, and pests move in and trees start getting weaker, and ultimately trees die. And that's the worst case scenario you can possibly ever think of having.
I spent my youth dropping coins in a wishing well.
So wrapping up on planning for your bonsai. Keep in the back of your mind that the goal is the destination. It's where you want your bonsai to finish. You may never get there, that's fine, but that is the goal. That's what you want to get to. The training that we do to our bonsais, that's the journey to get towards the destination. That's the enjoyable part. That's where as long as we're following and have our goal in mind, the training, the wiring, the pruning, the shaping, the repotting, all that stuff, that's the journey that we take with the trees. The training plan is the map that gets you to your goal. And that's the most important part. That's what I want to focus on today, is that the map for getting from where you are today to the best bonsai in the world, that's the map. How do you do that? And that can be running sacrifice branches for 12 months, reviewing, assessing thickness, and how many resources are going to that tree. Is it starting to drain from other areas of the tree? Do I need to shorten the sacrifice branch, not remove it, and then continue to grow it? There's so much to it, so much to that map. But that's where I think for me, it was really evident at this time of year when you're doing your spring pruning and you're starting to work through your trees and starting to lop things off left, right and centre. That's when it's most important that you have your goal, but you have the map on how to get there as well. And then the journey is the enjoyable part. It's making sure that we do the right thing at the right time with the trees, as always, to make sure that they keep taking those steps forward, that we don't do things to the trees to weaken them or to weaken our resolve to spend time with the trees. So it's in planning and goal setting for your trees is super important. So right now feels like, for me, it's the calm before the storm. So right now, just run through what I've been doing in the garden with trees and customer trees. And so we've gone through spring haircut has happened. Started with pinching out maples, developed maples, advanced maples as they sort of started to grow. Go through, prune out the rest of the spring growth on a lot of different trees around the place. Candle breaking on Japanese black pines as they start to get too strong and dominate, to try and balance resources on the trees. And then most recently it's been the defoliation process for deciduous trees. And that involved full defoliation of some trees where you take off all the leaves, others partial, like Japanese maples, 50% leaf reduction. Then others, maybe it's an area specific, you're defoliating the strong areas to sort of turn down the strength volume on those ones and not defoliating the weaker areas so they can stay stronger and hopefully get stronger by growing a little bit more as well. So area specific defoliation, and that's kept me pretty busy. There's been lots of leaf mass being put into the green bin at home, and it's satisfying, very satisfying, because with that new growth that we've had from spring, I look at the ramification now on the trees once they've done the defoliation process, and I can see they've taken another step in the right direction, which is nice. It really makes me smile. So it's been busy. And the other thing too is what's kept me busy is YouTube. So hopefully you've checked out my YouTube channel and you subscribe to it. So Bonsai Matsu on YouTube, where what I'm trying to do, what my aim is to link the podcast and YouTube with Instagram/Facebook feed, where the topical things or topical tasks that are happening now that are of interest for those, like I said, around my local area or within Australia, can have a look at things and see what I'm doing and how I do it, and I go through and explain the process. But then hopefully on the flip side, people in the Northern Hemisphere can get use of it when it's their time for the season. So I'm trying to upload and produce these videos as quickly as I possibly can to make sure that I'm releasing them in time for them to be of use to people. There's no point putting out something on defoliation in winter, because it's not really going to do very much for the trees. Whereas right now, hopefully you can watch something on defoliation, look at it and go, yep, that's perfect. Mine's ready for that now. That's how I do it. Great. This is what I'm going to do. This is my plan. This is how I'm going to incorporate that technique into what I do. So that's definitely kept me busy, but it definitely feels like the calm before the storm, because very soon it's Japanese black pine decandling time, which for me is a really, really busy time that I love, but it's going to be quite time consuming based on the number of trees. And as I said at the start, that 1 to 2, basically there's twice as much decandling to be done with the same number of trees this year as to what there was last year. That's the basic premise. So it's going to be a busy time, but I love it. I really look forward to that. Like I said, same as defoliation, same as any of the tasks that get undertaken with the trees. It's always done with joy, never with sadness, because it's helping me get to what my goal is with each of those individual trees, and it's really, really satisfying for me to look at my collection and look at my trees, and then not just year on year, but season on season, I can see improvements and where things are going, and if something needs to be rectified, if there's an issue with that tree, then definitely it's taken into consideration as well. And I don't ignore what needs to be done, so I try not to miss any opportunities for the advancement of the trees by procrastination or being too busy doing other things. So there's always something to be done to push the trees to the next level. But yeah, black pine decandling will definitely come up very, very soon. So I found while we're talking about the planning side of things and what's been going on too, it's I think taking your time to develop your trees and to do things rather than rushing them. And I was going to say overworking, but it's not overworking, but rushing the process. By taking your time always results in you achieving your goals sooner. Always. You want really good bonsai, just take your time. Make sure that your plan that you're setting in place is correct, and don't rush from season to season. Always, which anyone who's listened to this before will know that the strength and vitality of your tree is number one. And that's got to be always in the back of your mind before you do anything. If the tree's not strong enough, just stop. Because anything that you do to that tree, wiring, pruning, whatever it is going to have an impact on the future longevity of that tree, of that bonsai. So strength is number one and should always be your number one. Now, you guys know that I love having purpose with your trees. I love having some kind of goal, some kind of incentive to work with your trees. And I love bonsai shows. I think bonsai shows are a great thing to not only push you, not only push your trees, not only push the community, bonsai community that you're part of, but to also present it to people that will be just like us when they come in and look at them and go, wow, how good are they? So I think that it's really important that these bonsai shows get all of our support. And there's one that is coming up. I've talked about it before on the podcast, in March next year, called the Bonsai Open here in Australia. It's up on Central Coast in New South Wales, where there's, for the first time in Australia, there's some big money being offered for prizes for people that put trees on display. And I think it's definitely something to check out. If you can make it there, it's maybe worth the trip. Now we can start getting around again. But if you can look at putting trees in there, well, I think it's it might be worth your while if you can win a big first prizes, some like $3,000 or something. So it's worth it. So I think having something to drive your plan along the path of maybe it's a bonsai show coming up in a year's time or a year and a half's time or 2 years' time or whatever it is. I think that, like I've always said, bonsai time is very, very short, very, very quick. So by having a target somewhere in the future for what we do, and a bonsai show is always a great one to say, hey, I really need to do something, or when I repot that tree, it's going to go into this pot because that pot is, a magnificent pot, but it suits the tree perfectly. So, yeah, so anyway, that's another thing we can use as motivation with our trees.
One day that I would find a story to tell. How every regret's of soulless empty life.
So another thing that I've been thinking about and been pondering, and this is very, very unique, I suppose. It's very individual for all of us. But it was something that I just wanted to talk about because, as I said, I have these ramblings going on through my head as I work through my trees, and you see lots of things on all the different social medias, and we all do it where you look at something and you go, oh, I like that. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, that could be better here, and oh, that could be better. What would you do with this, and how would you change it, and blah blah blah. So, I suppose the question is what is beauty in bonsai? Is it crackly bark on a trunk? Is it a nice nabari? Is it a beautiful pot, an antique pot that's just perfectly suited to the foliage and structure of the tree? Is it the new spring foliage? Is it autumn colours when they get here? Is it the winter silhouette of a lovely, well-developed, well-structured, deciduous tree? Is it the vibrancy of pine needles and the structure that they bring in that provocation of memories and thoughts about trees that you've seen somewhere in your earlier life? Is it an Australian native that's twisted and gnarly, but it looks like it's, as you're working your way up the trunk, it looks like it's hanging on for dear life, and you get to the foliage and the foliage is beautiful and there's lovely flowers in there as well. Is that where beauty is? And I think that to understand what your plan is for the tree, you need to know what you're striving for. And what you're striving for is, as I said earlier, is perfection. But it's perfection for you. It's perfection in your head. It's not what... I do not want ever anyone saying, oh, I've done this to my tree because I think someone else... I think Scott would like it. I think someone else would like this. Or that person would be happy and, oh, geez, it looks like their trees. That doesn't make anybody happy. That won't make you happy. So I think what you've got to strive for is what you deem as perfect and where you find beauty in bonsai. And a lot of it comes from nature. A lot of it comes from what we've seen in the wild. A lot of it comes from when you're walking around streetscape. A lot of it comes from what you see in movies or on TV or anywhere, in books, on the internet, something like that. There's always something. This cookie cutter rubbish that I've heard people go on with, I don't think that exists, because everywhere we've all got a reference point in our head about what we think is perfect when it comes to bonsai, and we don't put a picture up of another tree in front of us and go, well, I'm going to copy this tree exactly, and it's going to look exactly like that. Even if you did that, there is next to no chance ever that you can get all aspects of one bonsai to look exactly the same as the other. Genetically, the trees are different, so the bark will be different. The leaf structure will be different. The internode length will be... They're all unique, and that's the beauty of the bloody things. is that no two bonsai are going to be ever identically the same. You find that with your collection that your trees take on a certain feel, but that feel comes from exactly what I'm talking about now, about where we find beauty in our bonsai. And I can tell you, when I have a lot of people come through my workshop and do training class with me and all that sort of thing, and when they sit down with a tree and go, what would you do to this, Scott? And I go, well, what do you like about the tree? Which part do you love? Because, I might look at it and go, well, I'd cut this, this and this, but that's where I'd find beauty. But the person goes, I really love this about the tree. It's like, cool, let's keep that, let's take that into account and build our structure, build our design, our tree, our bonsai around what you find beautiful. Let's not take what you find beautiful just because it doesn't fit what I think is beautiful for bonsai. I'm never the one that has to sit there and look at the trees day after day after day. I might see them for a 2-hour period and then they're gone for a year and I don't see them again for a long time. But the owner, the custodian of that tree, the person who has it in their care and responsibility, they're the one that has to look after that tree. So they're the ones that must be happy with however it looks, with whatever it is. Wherever they find beauty in that tree, that's what they should do. I've talked about this before. Horticulturally, there are definitely things that need to be taken into consideration to allow the tree to be as strong as it possibly can. Like when we wire a branch, we open up the foliage. We don't keep it all scrunched together. The apex, strongest area normally of the bonsai needs to be pruned more than the weaker areas to allow those weaker areas to get as strong as the strongest area. So it's that balancing act that we do with our trees. So there's always things we need to take into consideration and how we need to manage the trees. But I think that where we find beauty should be the number one consideration before you get scissors or branch cutters or anything onto a tree and start tearing into it and designing it just because you can. So out of interest, where do I find beauty in bonsai? Because I get asked that a lot. I get asked, what do I find? Sit down in front of a particular tree. What is it that you look for? What do you like? I like deliberate intent when it comes to designing bonsai. I like structured, well thought out plans that result in something beautiful. So that could be, and one thing that jumps to mind clearly that I think is possibly overlooked a little bit is branch taper, which, we talk about taper of trunks, thicker to thinner. So thicker at the base up to a thinner at the top. No matter what style tree it is, no matter how, what stage of development it's at, I think that is really super important, having taper on a trunk, because it shows the aging process. As a little seedling grows, the oldest part is the lowest part, the youngest part is the top part. So the older something is, the thicker it should be, which gives the impression of being a tree. Now, same as branches. As a branch starts to push out and get longer, then the newest part is the tip and the oldest part is the section that's connected to the trunk. So I think where there's deliberate intent for pruning and development processes that keep our branches getting thinner towards the end, naturally stepping down towards thinner at the end, that's beautiful. It's easy to make a branch that's one thick sausage, the same thickness right the way along from the trunk out to the tip, cut off, and then all the branches come out of one point, like a Japanese maple does, where they all push out of one point. Right now your spring silhouette will be beautiful. I don't doubt that. It'll look magnificent. But autumn gets here, leaves drop off. You look at it in winter, and it's just an ugly stick of a branch. So I think that's where I definitely find beauty in the small things. When you'll see it happen quite a lot with anyone that's experienced at bonsai, is when they go to a bonsai exhibition, it's nice to look at the tree from eye height. So you're looking sort of at the, 2/3 the way up the trunk to get the good feel for a beautiful pot, to a nice nabari, to a lower trunk, to the branching positioning, to the apex. But a lot of experienced bonsai people will look under the tree as well and look up at the foliage mass and the structure of the branching. I think that's where I find a lot of beauty, because you see that's the unseen hero most times with bonsai, is that you do all this work, you wire your branches out, and you make them look beautiful and make them a highly effective functioning machine for the tree to harness the sun's energy, and you're pruning them back and having them go from thicker to thinner all the way down, and every time you work on the tree you're looking for thick stubs, you're removing those and only leaving the lightest, you're reducing internode length, so the distance between buds is being shortened. But when it's full of foliage, or as it's growing, or like a pine never loses its foliage, it shouldn't unless it's dead, but you never truly get to appreciate all that hard work that goes into these trees unless you look up underneath the branches and you get to see the structure. And that's where I find beauty, because I know that the person that has that tree loves it, and they've put a lot of time into it, and they've really had a solid plan that they've worked on. It's not something that happens by chance. Beautiful bonsai, it's not, you don't take something and 12 months later go, look at that, that's a beautiful bonsai, how did that happen? It's decades, it's years and years and years of dedicated hard work that's where I find the beauty. I also find in the little things, things like genetics on a tree, things that we can't, as bonsai enthusiasts, we can't alter. The intricate pattern of a leaf. Got a beautiful European hornbeam, and it's just magnificent, and the pattern on it that just comes with it. I know they're all the same, but I don't know. I find that anything that makes me stop and look twice with my bonsai, that's where I find beauty. And it can be the little things. It can be something that just a feel for the tree. It can be something that sort of just makes you stop and go, wow, look at that. That's amazing. You walk past an Australian native, a Banksia, and you see it starting to form a flower, and it's like, oh, wow, look at that. It does it every year, so it's not like it's a surprise, but every time it does it, it makes me stop and look and go, that's just incredible. Just to be so privileged to be the custodian, as I say all the time, the custodian of that tree for the period of my life, and to be allowed to make it the best Banksia I can in the world is such a privilege and such an honour, and that's where I find beauty. I also find beauty when I'm repotting. Sounds stupid, but I know that when I take trees out of pots and I look at the root base that tree's got, and the beautiful nabari, when I finally get to look at things closely and I stop, it's not a rush. It's something you have to take your time with, and you spend half an hour repotting or whatever it is. And for that period of time, I get to look at the roots and go, yeah, you know what? Really good job, me, but great job, tree. You've grown this solid foundation now that I know will allow you to be amazingly healthy for a very, very long period of time, and will allow me to make you the perfect version that I think you can possibly be, because I've done my bit, but you've also done your bit as a tree, and together we're a great team, and we can make sure that things go on long after I'm dust in the ground, and this tree will still be kicking on, and hopefully a magnificent bonsai somewhere down the track. So we've all got busy lives, we've all got lots happening around the world. There's always lots happening, positive, negative. But the best part is that bonsai is such a consistent force in our lives that, you've got to make sure that you maintain the momentum. Never lose focus on those little trees, no matter what is going on elsewhere. They need our care 24/7. There's something we can't turn our back on, and we shouldn't turn our back on. So I think that, for me and what I'm trying to convey with today's the podcast is that having this plan should hopefully give you a little spring in your step, should hopefully provide you some inspiration when you look at the tree and go, yes, yeah, actually, if I did this and I did that and this developed and that happened on this bonsai, then it would be on the way to being the best bonsai in the world. And then when that's done, then I would look at this part and then I would do that part. And I think that, you don't need to go and necessarily acquire new trees. You can look at any tree that you've got in your collection, all your trees in your collection, and I think you could put them all on a path. I'm not saying the path is going to be immediate, so there's no such thing as instant bonsai, but there is instant planning where you can quickly look at it and go, well, if it was like this, for me, that would be the best in the world. So therefore, I need to take these steps, and this is the sequence of events that needs to happen with this tree. It might be that you look at it and go, well, you know what? In order to take the first step, I need to get this thing in good bonsai soil. So therefore, step one for me is repotting season. I need to make sure that this is in good growing medium. I need to make sure it's got a solid foundation before I do anything with this tree. And I'll let you know a secret. That's my step one. Every single time whenever I acquire a tree, I always assess the roots and always look to put it into a potting medium that I know will deliver certain results, because once I get those results, I can then start the rest of the ball rolling. So, for me, repotting's a long way away. It's 8 months, 9 months. So, am I fussed about that? Not at all. Not at all. If it means I need to wait 9 months to get somewhere, that'd be great. As I said before, taking your time always results in you achieving your goals faster. So, looking at it now going, yeah, but I can defoliate this time of year, so I'm going to defoliate the tree. All right, so you defoliate the tree, but you haven't worked on the roots, which is step one for the strong development of that tree. Once you've defoliated it, tick the box, you've mechanically done the job. Does the tree go forward, or does it go backwards after you've inflicted that on the tree at the time that you shouldn't have, when it was too weak? And the answer is always going to be it's gone backwards. So you're going to end up taking more time to achieve what you want by rushing, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. So that's where this planning part really, really comes into it. You've got to look at how you're going to get positive reinforcement along the plan as well. And it's really, really super important, because, repotting can not seem like it's the most rewarding task. It's filthy, it's messy, it's whatever. But like I said, I think it's absolute key to success with bonsai is repotting. But for me, when I look at the positive reinforcement, it's spring, because I've repotted late winter. Trees go out, get nurtured, get ready to go. Then I get the spring growth, and that is my reward. When I see those trees wake up and they shoot, and you might look along and the growth, suddenly goes from being lackluster to really vibrant, really kicking along. And that's where you go, you know what, that's my positive reinforcement for that part. Defoliation. Positive reinforcement, as I said earlier, for me is looking at the ramification that's developed from winter to spring. By then cutting it back, then removing the foliage mass, I get to see that very quick development. So it's like, yeah, that's awesome. And so there's always something along the way that makes me smile, that reinforces my plan that I have for the trees. But also, it gives me great satisfaction to continue doing what I'm doing and to stay the path that I've set for the trees. So there we are. That's another podcast done for this year. The next one, invariably, I believe, will be heading towards talking about black pines, and if I can ever get the sap off my fingers from decandling, then I'm sure I'll upload another podcast very, very soon for you. I do have in the back of my mind that I'm not about putting out a certain number of podcasts. I'm more about keeping the podcast relevant to me and to people that listen to it. So you might not have a million podcasts coming out per week with me, but I certainly hope that you enjoy what does come out, because I really enjoy the build up to the podcast. And like I said, I've got a little notebook that I'm constantly scribbling notes in to say, oh, that's right, I've got to put that on the podcast, because that's topical, and yeah, that has an influence on how I do whatever I do, and I'd love to share that with everybody and maybe get people thinking about it. So, if when you listen to the podcast, my hope is that you pick up maybe one thing out of the podcast and go, yep, that's something that I can get out of it. No, I'm not listening to that part, not listening to that part, but yeah, that part really resonates with me, and I'm going to run with that, and that's going to make you enjoy your bonsai more and make your bonsai healthier, which is my ultimate aim. Then, yeah, job done, perfect. That's awesome. That's great. So please stay in touch. I don't like talking just for the sake of talking. I think there's more than enough waffle around in the world. So the last thing I want to do is add to that noise in the world. I do want to be a positive a positive voice in the world of bonsai for everybody, and hopefully bring enjoyment to people through these little trees that go on forever and ever, and make people very, very happy. So that's my goal. So just keep going, stick with it. Any questions, please stay in touch. I love it. No matter where you are around the world, it's really nice to hear things. If I can help, I definitely will. If I can't, I'm more than honest to say when it's outside my realm, or you probably need to talk to someone more local. But stay in touch through the socials, through Facebook, through Instagram. Check out YouTube as well. I'm really starting to grow momentum with that, and want to build up quite a catalogue of relevant techniques and processes and that sort of thing, and demonstrations on what I do and how I do it, to hopefully help in some small way for people around the world. And you can also email me, scott@bonsaimatsu.com, or get in touch via the website, bonsaimatsu.com. It's nice to know the bonsai world is so small and so connected, and I love it. So I love to be part of it, and if this podcast can bring joy to people, then yep, that's awesome. So enjoy your time with your trees. Make sure that you develop a plan. Don't make it complex. Just make it something to get your bonsai from where it is now to how it can be the very best in the world to you, not to anyone else, just to you. It's very personal what we do with our trees. I know I don't like being told what to do, and I'm certain that you don't like being told what to do either. So make sure that it's all about you and your bonsai and the satisfaction you both get. So take care. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time. So happy bonsai.